Hey guys, what's up? It's Max, and I'm going to be taking a look at the recent fan polls that were done on Twitter. Shout out to TFG for running these polls every so often. They're definitely helpful so that fans can have an idea of where their favorite character falls in terms of popularity, as well as helping Arxis easily know which characters are popular here in the West. I've actually seen them retweet a couple of his tweets before, so I'm fairly certain that they do take a look at the results from these polls, especially considering some of the characters that have been announced this year, especially recently. I'm going to be putting a link to his Twitter down in the description, so be sure to check it out and give him a follow. Mainly, I'm going to be talking about the four core franchises: BlazBlue, Persona, Undernight, and RWBY. But at the very end of the video, I will be talking about the other three, so be sure to stick around to the end. Okay, so first up is BlazBlue. Just a heads up, the polls for all these franchises were done at the same time. The first one was done close to the time the game launched last year. The second one was done earlier this year, I believe in February, and the most recent one was actually done at the beginning of this month. So, taking a look at BlazBlue, pretty much as expected, the characters who were important to the story or who've been a part of the game since the very beginning tend to stay in the top 10. Looking at the most recent fan poll, I really think that the latest character reveal for BBTAG had an effect on the results here. Hibiki is no longer in top 5, and my best guess for that is just that, Neo has a few similar moves to him, and it kind of looks like interest has just shifted more towards Kagura now, as well as Bullet. It's definitely nice to see Bullet make it into top 5. Bullet and Kokonoe being in the top 5, that would be great if they did make it to the game. Because then every current member of Sector 7 that was playable in BBCF would finally be in BBTAG, and I think that'd be cool to see. The one thing, the one thing though that I will say that I don't like having to see on this list, and I already mentioned it before on stream, but it's just the fact that Terumi still has to be on this list. He's still not yet in the game. And don't get me wrong, I'm happy that Susanoo is in the game. I'm probably going to be playing him myself, honestly. It's just that for the villain reveal, they had Persona, Uni, and BlazBlue. And Persona and Uni both got not a villain from their franchise. They got the villain that the fans wanted. I don't know Uni lore that well, but from what I've heard, Hilda was pretty much the only villain choice. But when it came to Persona, it was Adachi and Minazuki. And I mean, you can technically argue that Minazuki was the more relevant villain because he was the actual, he did play the villain role in the Persona 4, like Arena, as well as Ultimax. He was pretty much, the villain during those games. And, of course, Adachi's more popular, and the Persona fans, were able to get Adachi, and that's hype. That's awesome. I just, it's just, at least for me, I'll speak for myself. For me, it's just a bit annoying that for BlazBlue, Terumi has consistently been the more popular, the most iconic version of his character. Susanoo pretty much appeared at the end of BBCF for what, like maybe 20 minutes or so. And, fans who haven't played BBCF or didn't get to the end of BBCF don't even, they don't even know who Susanoo is probably. If they saw him, they wouldn't think that he's Terumi. They have different personalities, different move sets. To be completely honest, at least from my perspective, they're pretty much treated as two different characters, even though lore-wise, yes, technically, Susanoo is Terumi. It's just a bit irritating. They got the villain, and we got an alternate form of the villain, pretty much. And I mean, man, I really hope that the reason that they did this is that Susanoo, since he's more popular in the West, they decided to reveal him here, and maybe they have plans for Terumi to be revealed at Evo Japan, since Susanoo is only popular here in the West, not in Japan, but Terumi's popular, in both. So if that's the case, then that makes sense then that they would reveal Terumi in Japan. And still, I'm sure that plenty of us here in the West would be hyped about it as well. But yeah, I mean, that's just my thoughts on it. It's a bit disappointing, but at the same time, what we're getting is still, really hype. Moving on to Persona, it's clear that fans really wanted the main P4 cast to make it into BB Tag. We had Teddy come earlier this year. We have Adachi coming next month. And of course, right now, since Adachi was added in, Rise is now the number one most requested Persona character, as well as being the most requested character overall. But I'm going to get to that in just a bit. Honestly, I'm not too surprised at the top 5 here for Persona. Only a couple of things kind of caught me a little bit off guard. Just looking at the previous polls, Yukari taking it over Junpei was kind of a surprise. Just because I feel like between the two, I feel like I see Junpei mentioned more often. Um, as well as Margaret. Margaret here taking it over Marie. I know there's debate that goes on when it comes to Marie's existence in general, but I don't know. At least in the past few polls, Marie was, over Margaret. I personally, my favorite's Marie. Between the two, I prefer Marie, but I did hear that Margaret was a pretty good character in P4AU, and I'm sure people would like to see that in BB Tag, especially the Margaret players. We'll have to wait and see, but if we did get all of the Velvet Room attendance, I think that'd be pretty awesome. You know, if the fans want Margaret, then I think, Margaret would be a really solid choice. So next up is Uni and RWBY. Starting off with Uni, Wagner, Nanase, and Phonon being in top 3 doesn't really surprise me. I've seen a lot of people talking about Wagner and Nanase, especially like ever since the game launched, to be honest. And I've seen a good amount of love for Phonon really recently. So I'm not too surprised to see them at the top there. I am a bit surprised, though, to see Byakuya above Enkidu. Just from my experience, I see a lot more people asking for Enkidu than Byakuya. But at the same time, I do see a good number of people say that Enkidu would not be that good if he was added to BB Tag. So, if you consider that and you look at Byakuya's moveset, I can see how he could be the more popular pick for BB Tag and honestly be a real threat depending on how much of his moveset he brings over to this game. Moving on to RWBY, if you take a look, you'll see that character placements are a little bit all over the place. There are some characters. There's a good number of characters that you see consistently on all 3 of these lists, but there's some that you see disappear who, were there from the first list and aren't there on the current one. And keep in mind, the only RWBY character that's been added to the game since launch is Neo. So, there's been a lot of fluctuation when it comes to the opinions of which RWBY characters should get in the game. Honestly, looking at the current list, in my opinion, I think the current list is a really nice balance. Taking a look at the first poll, it really does look like fans wanted to get all of those RWBY characters that would fully represent that universe, at least through Volume 3. I really feel like these characters represent the universe through Volume 3 pretty well. But given that the last RWBY character we got was Yang, and she came out 2 weeks after release last year, and it's been over a year since then, and we're finally just now about to get our next RWBY character being Neo next month, I really feel like a lot of fans have had time to think about who would be most fun in this game from the show, or characters that are just like must-haves from the show. And I feel like it makes a lot of sense for Adam and Pyrrha here to be in the top 2 slots. If you're a RWBY fan, you probably know why. But in addition to that, I feel like they both would be really fun to play. I do know some people have compared Adam to Yuzu, but I really feel like Adam would have a completely different game plan compared to Yuzu. Even though they might have a couple of things in common, I feel like he would definitely handle like a completely different character. And Pyrrha, I feel like Pyrrha would be a really good all around character. It would just be really cool to see her make it in the game. And of course, Crow. There's been a good number of people who've been a bit worried about another Scythe character joining the roster. Personally, the way that I see it, Crow would be the most unique Scythe character in the game. For those who don't know, his Scythe is also a sword. He can transform his weapon between the two. And so far, we currently don't have a character like that in BBTAG. We also have Cinder and Sun in the top 5. I'll say for myself, my personal pick for another villain between Adam and Cinder, I would go with Adam personally, but I still think Cinder could be a fun character. I know in the past I said that she would probably play like 9, but on second thought, I'd take that back. She could, but she doesn't have to. She definitely doesn't have to. And I'd hope that if Arxis puts her in the game, they would make her as unique in the cast as they possibly could. So there's no reason for her to use ranged magic like as often as 9 does. And the last character that we have in the top 5 for RWBY, Sun. Now, I'll be honest, I was really happy to see that he finally made it into the top 5. I feel like he's a character that a lot of people have been sleeping on just because he doesn't get that much screen time, so he's not the first one that comes to mind. But playstyle wise, he would be a lot of fun in this game for sure. He has a staff that can turn into gunchucks, which are nunchucks that are also a gun. And yeah, so he'll be hitting you with his nunchucks and he'll be shooting at you at the same time. In addition to that, he also has the ability to use clones to attack. That's his semblance. Unlike Neo, though, he actually can make multiple clones at once. So I kind of feel like that would be implemented in a pretty interesting way in the game. I feel like he would have to have something where he can sit at one side of the screen and send clones to attack you. But at the same time, if you get around his clones, then he's like completely vulnerable or something. That would be really cool to see in the game. All right, next up, Arcana Heart. Even though they've only been a part of the most recent poll, fans have had plenty of time to think about what characters they'd like to join BBTAG. Since Saki and Weiss are Heart's closest friends, I knew they'd be in the top 5 for sure, but I will say it was a bit of a surprise to see Scarlecrot above Weiss. But still, I think she'd be really fun to play, and she definitely have a unique aesthetic in the games since she's the only character that would use chains as her weapon. I'm also glad to see that Petra made the top 5. She's a character that I personally voted for, and I felt like players were sleeping on her, so, I just felt like she deserved more attention, and I'm glad to see that she got it. Also, I noticed that Minori, the poster girl for 6 Stars Love Max, didn't even make the list. I guess that she's just not that popular. Hopefully, Arcana Heart gets more reps soon. I have an idea why it's been taking this long, but I feel like that's a topic for another day. On to Akatsuki Blitzcomp. I don't know too much about ABK, but I've been told that Perfecti is the villain for that franchise, and I can say that I've seen a lot of requests for her. So, at the very least, hopefully she gets in. Hopefully the rest of the top 5 here, can get in as well. And finally, we have Senran Kagura. From what I've seen, I feel like this poll was heavily influenced by a few things. First off, the SK fans in the West have gotten irritated over recent years because Yumi has been taking priority over Asuka, the protagonist, in the later SK games. I think that, combined with the fact that Yumi was announced first for BBTAG, had a lot of fans voting for the rest of the leaders, mainly Asuka, of course, because they mostly agreed that all the main leaders needed to be in this game. I even saw fans say that their favorite character is someone else like Kagura, Rinka, Yomi, or whoever, but they're going to be voting for Asuka because she needs to be the next character. And I feel like if they didn't need to worry about that in the first place, then I feel like this top 10 could look a lot different. Also, side note, last year in the data mine, both Asuka and Yumi had files in the game for completing their tutorials, so I'm personally almost willing to bet that Asuka will be the next SK character. On my BB Tag stream this Thursday, I'm going to be going over the Senran Kagura characters mentioned from this year's data mine, a few popularity polls, including this one, and also a few other characters that would just be really cool to see make it in a fighting game like BB Tag. Who would you like to see? Be sure to join the discussion and share your thoughts this Thursday around 5:30 p.m. EST. And lastly, here's the top 3 most requested characters from each franchise. Biggest thing to note is that Rise is number 1 and Terumi is actually not that far behind, which I think that's pretty impressive. With Adachi coming next month, I'd bet that Rise is on the way as well. And with Terumi being this popular, ARC would be leaving their easiest profit on the table if they didn't bring him in. Senran Kagura is looking pretty popular, considering that they're not even in the game yet, so that's really nice to see. Akatsuki Blitzkampf isn't looking that popular right now, but Akatsuki and the Tank have gotten a lot of attention, especially on ARC's Twitter page, so hopefully when 2.0 drops, ABK can get more love. That's all for today. I'll see you on Thursday on Twitch for the discussion. Thanks for watching.